Dark King says Iger wants out of the culture war because he's losing.
Yeah.
Well,
so let me talk about Iger now.
That's our main topic today. And also Ryan says, what's Iger's game plan? Line item: veto every producer, casting director, writer, and woke inclinations. I don't understand how he's going to accomplish exercising Disney from the culture wars. He needs a young priest and an old priest.
That would be a good starting point. But
that's a starting point for our story, actually, Andre, I guess.
Yeah.
So the biggest news of yesterday wasn't kind of a nothing burger of sorts, but we're still going to dive into this because there was a little bit more added to the story. I believe via WDW Pro, if I'm not mistaken, you were saying. Andre.
The WDW Pro, he dropped a video short time ago referencing a scoop from Matthew Baloney's Puck magazine, exposing some more details on why Iger may have overpaid for certain talking heads over at ABC. But we will get into all of that in due course here. The first major story part of this is actually something we learned from Bounding into Comics yesterday, who posted the report that the Walt Disney Company CEO Bob Iger wants to, quote, quiet the noise regarding culture war issues because they are, quote, not healthy for Disney's business. And Mike, would you like to take the story from here? Give us the highlights.
Do you want me to read it, or do you? I mean, I've read this already. Do you want me to read
it?
Yeah,
just give us your basic take on the story. Give us.
Well, I guess that's why I decided to pop on. I don't have an appointment with a client for a couple hours, and then I saw the topic of this morning. I'm like, okay, I think we need a dang it Bob expert. So
that's what I figured too. That's why I'm handing this one to you.
So I think there's a few angles to this. We've got to remember the backdrop that we've got right now. The backdrop that we have is that we have the next quarterly earnings call around the corner, which is coming up in November. We are literally not more than a month away from the earnings call. And everything that we've heard out of Disney in the past month or two is literally designed so that things get in a better place for Bob, both in terms of stock price and in terms of reputation. Because the thing that we need to understand in Hollywood and Hollywood-based companies, which Disney now is, Disney is no longer a theme park hospitality company. They are a Hollywood-oriented company. And reputation means more in Hollywood than anything. And so people say, well, Bob Iger has a bad reputation, or this person has a bad reputation. That's not what reputation means in Hollywood. And as someone who did post-production accounting, I've heard Script Doctor talk about this, and I want to repeat it for the benefit of the audience, that reputation means that someone who's good, someone who you want to be on their good side of, and you think that there's value to being on the good side of that person. And Bob is hyper-driven around being that kind of guy, that he wants to be on everybody's good side, and he wants everybody to be on his good side. And reputation is everything. His reputation as a CEO, the reputation of Disney being successful is tied to his ego, and his ego is tied to his self-worth. Now, we've seen what happens with the stock price. That's the second backdrop. Our first backdrop is we've got an investor earnings call coming around the corner, and everything that they're doing is oriented towards that going well. The second thing that we've had is Disney has had a brutal time keeping its stock anywhere near 100 or 90. It has sunk into the 80s, and it has basically been on life support in the 80s ever since. And I think, frankly, it bothers him to no end, as per your reporting, Andre and Tom and team with the videos. I think it bothers him to no end that it was on Bob Chapek's watch that the stock drove all the way up to its highest levels. And now under his return, it didn't even, on Bob's return, it hasn't returned to those high levels.
Yeah, that's got to burn.
That's got to just absolutely drive drive him nuts that the highest the stock price ever did. So here's what Bob thinks. Bob thinks in his mind that everything that he did is hit. And Bob Chapek, when that stock price went up on Bob Chapek's watch up till near basically $200 a share, is that Bob only got there. Bob Chapek only got there because of Bob Iger's good leadership, stewardship, and the ground that he laid below the feet that Chapek walked up to that stock price hill. And now that Bob's back, the fact that that stock blipped briefly and never returned to any kind of normal rate, which should be, I think, in Bob's mind at $100, $180 a share, bothers him to no end. We've seen constant news releases. We've heard about the gambling announcement with ESPN Plus. The battle related to carriage and distribution with the carrier Spectrum. We made everything is being lined up so that hopefully things get better. I mean, and let's not forget that it was not just a day or two before this that there was another announcement of the $60 billion, investment that they announced. And I guess at almost the same time, he told a bunch of investors in Orlando at what should be a discreet meeting, that they were going to get out of the culture wars. Now, the fact that this happened is phenomenally important. Now, there's two angles to this. Angle one is does he really mean what he's saying? Is Bob Iger the kind of guy who does what he says what he means, and means what he says?
Like Dumbo.
The second angle, yeah, exactly. The second angle to this is why. Why has Bob Iger done this? And the why to me is resounding, that if in a private meeting in Orlando, in front of institutional investors, that he felt the need to even make a comment that things will be quieting down. By the way, there's a third angle I just thought about, which is how are we going to quiet it down? That means that there is frustration and concern about Disney even being in a culture war amongst institutional investors. And this is what we have been waiting for a long ass time, because until institutional investors wake up, and I don't think we can ever expect people like BlackRock or State Street to wake up and not woke and stop woking up.
No, they're invested too deep in it. Yeah. It's
the other institutional investors, because there's a lot of institutional investors that are on the Disney investor list of major institutional investors beyond BlackRock and State Street. And so for the fact that he had to bring this up means that there is concerns amongst the institutional investors. And then the how does this quiet? Hold on, let me finish. Give me 30 more seconds, Tom. The how this quiets down is another issue, which is that there's two ways that they quiet down. The how could be, well, they actually turn away from this woke crap, which I highly doubt will happen. And then there's the fact that they're going to stop fighting about it out in the public, so it is a major issue. And then we have the real issue, which is that does Bob mean what he says what he means what he says? And I don't know, because my comment when this came out was that you can't do two things. You can't simultaneously, Bob, say to a group of investors in Orlando that we're going to quiet this woke crap down, when I just heard you on a recorded call at the last freaking earnings meeting tell me and other stockholders, institutional and retail alone, that you just told us that you saw yourself as a modern day Rosa Parks of the civil rights movement when it comes to woke crap. And you saw that your role in the culture war was something like FDR or Churchill from World War II, like you're doing some kind of holy crusade of woke with all this crap. So we can't say two things at the same time within the same 60 freaking days, because it was not just 2 months ago that I heard him twice, actually on two earnings calls in a row, basically say that the company is not going to veer away from the stewardship to Woke Island. And until this ship pulls away and sets sails on the open seas of what should be family entertainment, this company is lost. And I don't believe Bob, and he's a two-faced freaking liar until I see evidence to the contrary in the press, in public, on a real earnings call, and not at some discreet meeting where he's just sort of nudging and whispering in his institutional investors' ears. That's what I have to say. All right, Tom, sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, unless you have the transcript, as best as we know, because this just comes from a report out of, I believe it was, I can't remember. It was
New York Post.
Yeah, it was one of it wasn't one of the entertainment papers that this came from.
New York Post.
Yeah. So basically,
it was also in Bloomberg.
The understanding that I took, because they used it as the headline, but then after you get past the initial part, and even Script Doctor called them out on this, like the rest of the article had nothing to do with that. And in fact, all it was kind of a toss away moment where supposedly somebody had asked about the parental rights situation in Florida, And that was his response, was that they were going to quiet the noise in the culture war. And I got the same thing out of that you did, Mike. Not so much that he's going to stop the woke, but as he said a few months back, he's just going to put the pill in a treat so we don't notice it.
Yeah,
Yep.
I
I agree
that.
with you 100%, Tom. And that comment that got picked up was in a footnote. The original source was a footnote of an investor analyst report, which means that it was made off the cuff and nudgingly, like, you know, it's almost like it's no different than if we're in a meeting, Tom and Andre and Chato, and there's a presentation and we're sitting there, and I go over to Chato and say, you know, this guy's kind of, you know, it's literally nudging. I want a public statement. I want to know what is the future of this company, because I don't believe Bob for 2 freaking seconds. Not at all. This guy lied to his CEO and his board in order to preserve his own power in his own shower. F this guy is what I say. F this guy, Bob Iger.
And I mean, I think it's interesting that if he is talking about the fact that what he gave Chapek were all the tools to make himself successful, there is something to be said about that. But doesn't anyone remember what Chapek went through? Number 1, COVID. Number 2, people not going to the theme parks because of COVID. He had an unbelievable amount of stuff on his plate,
and he still managed to do well.
That's my point.
And that's what I think really.
And he was forced to do that hostage video by members of
that's
his
the
staff.
Next video we're putting out in the Bob Iger series right there, so you'll dig that one.
And so the thing is, all I can remember of Chapek's reign was just constantly trying to plug the holes in the dike. He was handed a very bad hand with regards to COVID and all this other stuff, the Reedy Creek thing. And I guess he did it well enough to raise the price of the stock, and then he handed it back to Iger, and then he dropped the ball. So.
Kind of, yeah. And just to add to what you were saying, I think that the reason why his answers changed so much, Mike, inside of a month, is that he will tailor his answers to who is asking the question and who is listening at the time.
That's everybody in Hollywood,
yeah, but some are more extreme on this than others. With many Hollywood types and stuff, you have the same talking points. Once the talking points has been established, they'll go through the same thing over and over and over again, right? You see much the same with Iger. Some things are talking points that he just repeats different versions of in every kind of speech that he gives, and even every internal presentation he also gives. But sometimes he will change the message slightly depending on who is asking the question. Here, obviously, the question was from someone not too happy with how things have been going. So he was able to give like something that could be interpreted as them walking back. But however, in this report, which is referenced later on here, this is something that I really picked up on. And that is the way that he phrased it with, Disney has to like get out of the culture war. What he said is that we have been caught up in the culture war. Basically, that this is something that Disney has, by accident and through no fault of their own, been hijacked and caught into and dragged into by other people. But that's not what happened, though, is it, Bob? It's not that random, horrible people decided, hey, Disney, we're going to get them. No. Disney went all out commie in their content. That is what caused it. That is how they ended up in this position. It wasn't that they were like, did nothing, did everything that they always do, and then randomly a bunch of people came and stopped spending money and started hating on them. No, Disney had to work very hard for that to happen in the first place. That is the kind of thing that he is toning down. His own involvement in getting Disney to a point where he now, whether he's genuine or not, has to say things like Disney wants to quiet the noise regarding culture war issues. Because obviously, it is not working out for Disney. I mean, maybe it's beneficial for him personally. Maybe he'll have like a nice directorship or something like that to that end, courtesy of the Democrat Party, who knows. But for Disney, it's been a complete and total disaster. One is going to be very difficult to get out of completely.
This clip was taken from Midnight's Edge in the Morning, which streams live every Monday, Wednesday and Friday at 9 AM Pacific Time on the Midnight's Edge main channel. There you can send in your live questions and comments before clips and full stream replays are uploaded to Midnight's Edge live archives. We are also on Twitter, Rumble, Odyssey and Facebook, so smash that like, help share, subscribe and join us.